I still remember the exact smell of those flowers at the funeral. White lilies. Maria always hated white lilies. She said they smelled like endings, like goodbyes wrapped up in perfume and false comfort. But I wasn't thinking about her preferences that morning when I woke up and realized I would never hear her voice again. I was thinking about how to survive the next few hours without completely falling apart in front of everyone who'd come to say goodbye to the woman I'd loved for 23 years. The funeral home was cold. Not the kind of cold you feel in your body, but the kind that settles deep into your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The casket was open. They always want you to see them one last time. Like that moment will somehow make it easier to accept that they're gone. It doesn't. It only makes it worse because you're confronted with the fact that the person lying there is not the person you loved. It's just a shell, an empty echo of all the years you spent together. I was 52 years old, and I felt ancient, completely worn down by 3 months of watching my wife disappear. Cancer had taken her inch by inch, day by day, until there was nothing left but a skeleton covered in paper-thin skin and a smile that had become so fragile I was afraid it would shatter if I touched it wrong. And then, one Tuesday morning at 4 o'clock, she was gone. Just like that. One breath, then nothing. The church was packed. Maria had been a good person in the way that mattered. She'd volunteered at the museum. She'd brought meals to neighbors. She'd remembered birthdays and anniversaries without needing reminders. She'd been the kind of woman that people naturally loved without really understanding why. There was something about her that made you want to be better, that made you want to deserve her kindness. My son Michael was sitting beside me in the front pew. He was 30 years old and he looked completely lost, like a child who'd wandered into the wrong movie. My daughter Sarah was on my other side, her hand gripping my arm so tightly I could feel her fingernails digging into my skin. She was holding on to me like I was the only solid thing left in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. The priest was saying things, words about eternal rest and blessed memory and the love of God. I wasn't really listening. I was watching the sunlight come through the stained glass windows and thinking about the last conversation I'd had with Maria before she slipped into the morphine haze that would last for 3 days until her heart stopped. "Take care of them," she'd whispered, her hand barely gripping mine. "Take care of Michael and Sarah. Be strong for them." As if I had a choice. As if I could just decide to be strong and suddenly become the kind of man who could hold his family together when everything was falling apart. The ceremony seemed to last forever and no time at all. People came forward to talk about Maria, about what she'd meant to them, about the time she'd helped them through a crisis, or the way she'd made them laugh, or how she'd always been there when they needed someone. And I'm sitting there thinking, you didn't know her. None of you knew her. Because if you'd really known her, you'd understand that there was something beneath the surface, something she was hiding, something that didn't quite add up about the woman I married, but I couldn't say that. I couldn't stand up and tell everyone that the woman they were mourning had secrets that reached back 30 years into a past she'd never fully explained to me. So I sat there and listened to her praised as if she'd been a saint, and I wondered who the hell I'd actually been married to. At the cemetery, the sky was grey and threatening rain. It felt appropriate somehow, like the universe understood that this wasn't a day for sunshine and hope. This was a day for darkness and cold, and the bitter realization that sometimes people are taken from you before you've had a chance to really understand them. I watched them lower her casket into the ground. The sound it made as the machinery released it, as it slowly descended into that hole in the earth, will stay with me forever. It was final, absolute. No going back, no second chances, no opportunity to ask the questions I'd been too comfortable, too satisfied, too happy to ask when she was alive. We went back to the house after the cemetery, Our house. Maria's house, really. The one she'd decorated with such care over the years. Every painting on the wall, every piece of furniture, every plant in the garden was a reflection of her taste, her vision, her personality. And now she was gone. But all of this remained. It felt obscene somehow. All these physical reminders of a life that no longer existed. People filled the house, relatives, friends, neighbors, colleagues. They brought food and flowers and casseroles wrapped in foil. They hugged me and said things like, "Let me know if you need anything, and she's in a better place now." As if Maria wasn't exactly where she wanted to be, which was alive with me, in this house that we'd built together. I found myself standing in her office around 5 o'clock that evening. It was a small room at the back of the house that she'd used for her volunteering work with the museum. The walls were covered with photographs of exhibits she'd helped curate. There were stacks of papers on her desk, notes in her handwriting about historical pieces and restoration work. Everything was so organized, so meticulous. Maria had always been like that. She noticed details that other people missed. I was looking at one of the photographs on the wall, a picture of Maria at some museum gala, standing next to the director, both of them smiling, when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. I wasn't in the mood for anything. Not condolences from distant relatives, not work emails, not spam messages trying to sell me life insurance or refinance my mortgage. But something made me look at it. It's Commander Walsh. I need to see you. Tonight. It's urgent. Commander James Walsh. I hadn't heard that name in 15 years, not since I'd left active duty, back before I'd married Maria. Before I'd tried to build a normal life and pretend that my years in the military had been some kind of temporary detour, not the real foundation of who I was. I stared at that message for a long time. My brain felt foggy, exhausted from grief, unable to process why my ex-commanding officer would be contacting me now, on this day of all days. I typed back, "Sir, I'm in the middle of my wife's funeral reception. This isn't a good time." The response came within 30 seconds. "I know about Maria. I'm sorry for your loss, but you need to listen to me carefully. You need to meet me tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going or why. Just trust me on this." Something in those words made my chest tighten. There was an urgency to them that I couldn't ignore. A tone that suggested this wasn't just some random military buddy reaching out to pay his respects. I typed, "Why? What's this about?" The 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. Finally, his message came through. "It's about Maria, about who she really was, about why I'm the only person who can tell you the truth. And Thomas, you need to understand something right now. Your life is going to change when you read what I have to show you. It's going to change fundamentally, so before you come, you need to be sure you're ready for that." My hands started shaking. I read that message 3 times, trying to understand what it meant. Maria, the truth, my life changing. I looked out the window of her office and saw Sarah talking to some of her mother's friends in the living room. She looked so fragile, so lost. Michael was in the kitchen picking at food without really eating anything. Both of them had just buried their mother, and I was about to leave them to meet with some ghost from my past who claimed to know secrets about the woman I'd loved. But I couldn't stay. Whatever was in that message, whatever Walsh knew, I had to find out. Because there had always been something I couldn't quite put my finger on about Maria, something that didn't match up, and maybe Walsh had the answers to questions I'd been too afraid to ask. I went downstairs and found my daughter. "I need to go out for a little while," I told her. "There's something I have to take care of." "Dad, no, not today, please, we need you here." But I was already moving toward the door, already grabbing my jacket, already disconnecting from the reality of what I should be doing and moving toward whatever terrible truth was waiting for me in the darkness. The drive to the address Walsh sent took 40 minutes. It was a warehouse in the industrial district on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that looks abandoned even when you know people are there. The kind of place where you go when you don't want anyone to know about the conversation. I pulled up at 8 o'clock at night and saw him standing by the entrance. He was older than I remembered. His hair was completely grey now, cut short and military style, like he'd never really left that world. His face was lined with decades I hadn't been there to witness. He was wearing a dark overcoat and standing very still, watching the road like he was waiting for something. When he saw my car, he didn't wave. He just gestured sharply for me to follow him inside. I got out of my car with my heart pounding in my chest. Every instinct was screaming at me to get back in the vehicle and drive away, but I didn't. I walked toward him, and he turned and went inside without waiting for me. The warehouse was dimly lit. There were a few overhead lights that cast long shadows across concrete floors and bare brick walls. It smelled like dust and old metal and something else that I couldn't quite identify. Industrial, cold, wrong. Walsh led me deeper inside, past empty storage areas and dark corners, until we reached a small office in the back. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it again behind me. For a long moment we just looked at each other. I was trying to read what was in his expression, trying to understand what he was about to tell me that was important enough to drag me out of my wife's funeral reception. "Before I show you anything," he said, "I need you to understand that what you're about to learn will change how you think about everything, about Maria, about the life you've built, about the last 23 years. Are you absolutely certain you're ready for that?" "No," I said, "but I'm going to find out anyway." Walsh nodded, like he'd expected that answer. He walked over to an old filing cabinet and pulled open a drawer. From inside, he withdrew a sealed manila envelope. It was yellowed with age, the paper worn and soft from being handled, and written across the front in handwriting I would recognize anywhere, even now, even after everything, was my name, Thomas. It was Maria's handwriting. "She gave this to me in 1994, Walsh said. "The day after you two met, actually. She made me swear an oath that I would keep it safe. She said that if anything ever happened to her, if she ever died or disappeared, I was to contact you immediately and give you this. She said you had a right to know the truth." My hands felt numb as I took the envelope. "What truth? What is this?" "Open it," Walsh said, "and prepare yourself, because the woman you married wasn't exactly who you thought she was." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, several documents with official-looking seals, and a small black USB drive. The letter was several pages long, written in Maria's handwriting, and the first sentence made the entire warehouse seem to tilt around me. "My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry that you have to find out this way." I couldn't read anymore. I had to sit down. Walsh gestured to a chair, and I collapsed into it, still holding the letter, still unable to process what I was looking at. "When did she write this?" I asked. 1994, Walsh said. "Right after you met. She updated it twice over the years, but the core of what she needed to tell you has remained the same." I took a breath and tried to focus on the words in front of me. My vision kept blurring, like my brain was rejecting the information before it could fully enter my consciousness. "In 1989, I wasn't living the life you think I was living," the letter continued. "I wasn't working at the university library like I told you. I wasn't studying for my master's degree in art history. I was someone else entirely. I was someone dangerous, and I was running from a life that could have destroyed me." "What does that mean?" I asked Walsh out loud, even though I knew he couldn't answer the question. He could only tell me what he knew. "Keep reading," Walsh said. He sat down across from me, his face heavy with the weight of secrets he'd been carrying for 30 years. "I was a field operative," the letter continued. Not officially, not through any government agency, but through a private contracting firm that did work for people who couldn't ask official channels. My job was acquisition, finding things, finding people, finding information. I was very good at it. I stopped reading and looked up at Walsh. She was a spy? Not exactly, Walsh said. She was a specialist. She could do things that other people couldn't. She could walk into a situation and read people instantly. She could find patterns that no one else could see. She could locate assets and individuals and information that were meant to stay hidden. She was brilliant, one of the best I ever worked with. You worked with her? I supervised her operation, Walsh said. She was under my command. That's how I knew her before you did. That's why she trusted me with that letter. I looked back at the pages in my hands, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman I'd just buried, the woman I thought I knew completely, was somehow a different person entirely, and this letter was her confession, her apology, her explanation for a life I'd never even known she'd lived. In 1989, the letter went on, I was assigned to target a man named Victor Delgado. He was involved in illegal arms trading and human trafficking throughout South America. My mission was to get close to his operation, to understand his network, to gather intelligence that could be used to dismantle what he'd built. I was sent to infiltrate his circle under a false identity, and I was very successful at that. Until I met you. You were at a university fundraiser. I remember that night so clearly. I remember looking across the room and seeing you talking to someone about a book you'd read, and you had this expression on your face like you genuinely cared about what they were saying, like you saw them as a real person and not just a means to an end. I was standing there in my false identity, my fake credentials, my entire life a lie, and I felt like you could see through all of it. Like you could see who I actually was underneath all the deception. And I wanted that so badly. I wanted to be the person you thought I was. I wanted to step out of the shadows and just be normal. Just be yours. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking too badly to hold the pages steady. I set them down on my lap and just sat there, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what I was reading. What happened? I asked Walsh. How did she go from being a spy to being a museum curator? She walked away, Walsh said. She was supposed to complete the assignment with Delgado. She had everything she needed to bring down his entire organization, but after she met you, she made a choice. She abandoned the operation. She destroyed her reports. She gave me the information, everything she'd gathered, and told me to use it however I thought best, and then she disappeared, just like that. Not just like that, Walsh said. It created a problem. Delgado's organization didn't take kindly to people walking away from them. They noticed when she disappeared. They noticed when the intelligence stopped coming. They realized they'd been betrayed. I felt my chest tighten. Did they hurt her? Did they? No, Walsh said firmly. The cancer was real. I verified her medical records myself. Delgado's people are brutal, but they're also intelligent. They operate in ways that are hard to trace. What they did was watch. They've been watching her for 30 years. Watching her? Monitoring her. Waiting. They've known where she was almost the entire time. They knew she was here with you. They knew about your children. They knew about her work at the museum. They were just waiting to see if she would ever become a threat again. I picked up the letter again and kept reading, my eyes moving across Maria's handwriting, hearing her voice in every word. The reason I'm telling you all of this now is because I'm not going to survive this cancer. I can feel it. No matter what the doctors say, no matter how many rounds of treatment I go through, I know that this is the end, and I can't leave you unprotected. I can't leave you without understanding the situation you're in. Delgado's people know about me. They know about you. They've been monitoring our lives for decades. They haven't made a move because I've been silent. I've never threatened them. I've never used the information I gathered. But now that I'm gone, everything changes. You become a loose end. You become someone who might have access to information they don't want exposed. I've prepared for this. I've made arrangements. There are documents in this envelope that prove what I'm telling you. There are bank accounts with funds that can protect you. There's insurance, information that I've kept safe that Delgado's organization doesn't know about, information that makes sure they can never touch you without consequences. But most importantly, there's the USB drive. Everything I ever gathered on Delgado is on that drive. Every transaction, every location, every person involved in his organization, everything that could destroy what he built. I never used it because I loved you too much to put you in that kind of danger. But now that I'm gone, you need to know that you have leverage. You have protection. I set the letter down slowly. I felt like I'd been struck by something. Like the ground beneath me had shifted and I was no longer standing on solid ground. Does she say what you should do with this information? I asked Walsh. Keep reading, he said. I looked back at the final pages of the letter. The handwriting here was different, shakier, like she'd written these words more recently, maybe just before she went into the hospital for the last time. Thomas, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to make a choice. A real choice, not one that's made for you. You can walk away from this. You can burn this letter, destroy the USB drive, and pretend that none of this ever happened. You can go back to your life as it was, as a teacher, as a father, as a normal man in a normal world. No one will bother you. Delgado's people understand that you're no threat if you're willing to stay silent. Or you can use what I've left you. You can take this information and do something with it. Not for revenge. I don't want that. Revenge would only pull you deeper into this darkness, but you could use it to protect yourself. You could use it to protect our children. You could use it to make sure that what Delgado has done, what his organization continues to do, is exposed. But that choice comes with a cost. That cost is stepping into the world I left behind. That cost is accepting that you're not just a normal man anymore. You're someone who has the power to change things. And power always comes with a price. I love you. I will always love you. Even after I'm gone, even after you read these words and realize that the woman you married was a lie, I need you to know that the love was real. The life we built together, the children we raised, the ordinary moments we shared, all of that was the truest part of my life. You made me believe that I could be good, that I could be normal, that I could leave the darkness behind. Now you have to decide if you're going to let that darkness consume you or if you're going to use it to protect everyone you love. I'm sorry, my love. I'm sorry for leaving you with this burden. But I trust you. I always have. I put the letter down and looked at Walsh. How long have you known she was sick? She called me 2 weeks before she died, Walsh said. She knew the end was close. She made me promise to contact you immediately, to give you everything, to tell you that the choice was yours. And you're telling me this now. Why not before the funeral? Why not give me time to process this? Because, Walsh said, Delgado's people are moving. They're in transition. Their operation is vulnerable right now in a way it hasn't been in years. And if you're going to do anything with this information, if you're going to make use of the protection Maria left you, now is the time. This window won't stay open forever. I stood up and walked to the small window in the office. Outside, I could see the city lights in the distance. Millions of people living their normal lives, unaware that some of them were living in fear, unaware that there were organizations operating in the shadows, doing terrible things. If I open that USB drive, I said, if I look at what's on it, what happens then? Then you'll know, Walsh said. And once you know, you can't unknow it. You'll have information that powerful people would prefer you didn't have, and you'll have to decide what you're going to do with it. Can I just walk away? Can I really just pretend this never happened? Yes, Walsh said, absolutely. Delgado's people will let you go. Your life will continue as it has been. Your children will be safe. You'll teach your classes and come home to your empty house and eventually heal from losing Maria. That's the safe choice. And if I don't walk away? Then, Walsh said, you become part of something bigger than yourself. You become a threat to people who take threats very seriously. But you also become someone who has the power to help the people that Delgado's organization has hurt. You become someone who can actually do something about the darkness instead of just living in fear of it. I turned back to face him. Maria said my life might be in danger. Why? Why would Delgado care about me if I never knew any of this? Because, Walsh said, he doesn't know that you didn't know. As far as he's concerned, you're married to a woman who betrayed him. And now that woman is dead. He has no idea what she told you. He has no idea what information she left behind. And that uncertainty makes you dangerous. I looked down at the USB drive in my hand. Such a small thing. Such a small piece of plastic and technology that apparently held the power to change everything. I need time, I said. You don't have much of it, Walsh replied. But take what you need. Just know that the clock is ticking. And Thomas, welcome to the real world, the one your wife spent 30 years trying to protect you from. I drove back to the house in a fog. The world around me felt unreal, like I was moving through a dream where nothing quite made sense and physics didn't work the way I remembered. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, and I kept replaying Walsh's words in my head, welcome to the real world, as if the 23 years I'd spent with Maria had been some kind of elaborate fiction, as if my marriage, my children, my entire existence had been built on a foundation of lies so complete that I'd never even suspected the truth was lurking beneath the surface. I got home around midnight. The house was dark except for a light Sarah had left on in the entryway. I could see her car still in the driveway, which meant she'd waited up for me. I wasn't ready to see her. I wasn't ready to look into her face and pretend that everything was normal, when my entire understanding of reality had just been shattered into a million pieces. But I went inside anyway. Sarah was asleep on the couch in the living room. She was still wearing the black dress she'd worn to the funeral, and there was a glass of wine on the side table that she'd apparently abandoned hours ago. I covered her with a blanket and left her there. Michael was upstairs in the guest room. I could see the light under his door, which meant he was still awake. I didn't go to talk to him. I didn't have the strength for that conversation. I went into my office and locked the door. The USB drive was still in my pocket. I could feel it there, a tiny weight that seemed to grow heavier with every passing second. I pulled it out and looked at it. It was just a generic black drive. Nothing special about it. It could have contained anything. Photo albums, financial records, love letters. Instead, it apparently contained the secrets of a criminal organization that had been watching my wife for 30 years. I sat down at my desk and stared at the drive for a long time. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I wasn't keeping track. I was just thinking about Maria, about the woman I'd married, about the life we'd built together, what was real about her. That was the question that kept running through my head. Was anything real? Was her love for me just another cover, another role she was playing? Or was that the one genuine thing in her entire existence? Was I the real person, the one thing that pulled her out of the darkness? Or was I just another target, another assignment that had gone too far? I thought about the day we met. It was at a university fundraiser for the library. I was there because I'd just started teaching at the university, and they'd asked all the new faculty to attend. She was there with a group of people, and I remembered being struck by how she stood apart from them somehow, how she seemed present in a way that other people weren't. We started talking near the wine table. Someone had knocked over a glass and made a mess, and we both reached for napkins at the same time. She smiled at me, and I remember thinking that it was the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. I remember thinking that I'd never felt so completely seen by another person. Now I understood that what I'd seen as genuineness was probably just skill. She was trained to be convincing. She was trained to read people and understand what they wanted to see. I'd just been a mark, and she'd been very, very good at her job. But then why had she walked away? Why had she abandoned her mission, destroyed her reports, and chosen a normal life with me? That didn't make sense if I was just another target, unless the letter was true. Unless she'd actually fallen in love with me despite herself. Unless the choice to leave that world had been real and genuine and born out of actual emotion rather than calculation. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. Because if I didn't believe that our love was real, then I had nothing left. I had a marriage that was a lie, children that were accidents of deception, a life that was built on a foundation of sand. Finally, around 2 in the morning, I plugged the drive into my computer. The files were organized into folders labeled by year. I opened the first one, 1989, and found thousands of documents. Photographs, intelligence reports, audio files, maps, bank records. It was overwhelming. It was everything Maria had gathered on Delgado's operation over the course of the years she'd worked for him. I clicked on a video file labeled Delgado Personal Profile. The video opened and I saw a man's face on the screen. He was in his 60s, with salt and pepper hair and cold, intelligent eyes. He was speaking Spanish, but the video had subtitles. "My operation exists because governments fail," he was saying to someone off camera. "They fail to protect their citizens. They fail to provide for their people. They fail to understand that sometimes people need things that the system won't give them. So I provide those things. At a cost, yes, but fairly. I take care of my people, and my people take care of me." I watched as he went on to describe his operation. Not in graphic detail, but in clinical terms that somehow made it worse. He wasn't a monster ranting about his evil plans. He was a businessman describing his enterprise like he was running a Fortune 500 company, instead of trafficking in human misery. There were files on all of his associates, photographs of men and women involved in the operation. Some of them had notes attached, names, addresses, family information. There was a file labeled Leverage Points that contained information about various officials, police officers, and government agents who were either on Delgado's payroll or could be coerced into cooperation. I scrolled through hours of files. I watched videos of transactions. I read documents in Spanish that I had to translate using online tools. And slowly, a picture emerged of an operation that was vast and complex and deeply embedded in the infrastructure of several South American countries. And my wife had gathered all of this. My wife had walked into the heart of this darkness and documented it, and then walked away from it all because she'd fallen in love with me. Around 4 in the morning, I found a folder labeled Personal Not for Distribution. I opened it and found a video file labeled simply Maria. I hesitated before clicking on it. Something in me knew that this was going to be different. This wasn't going to be intelligence gathered for a mission. This was going to be personal. I pressed play. The video opened to show Maria sitting in a chair. She looked younger, maybe 15 years younger. She was wearing an elegant dress, and her hair was styled differently, and for a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. But then she smiled, and it was unmistakably my wife. "This is a personal recording," she said to the camera. "This is not part of the official record. This is just me, confessing things that need to be confessed. I've been in this organization for 5 years. I've done things that I'm not proud of. I've hurt people, I've lied, I've manipulated, I've used my skills and my intelligence to help an organization that commits terrible acts. And I tell myself that I'm just following orders, that I'm not responsible for what Delgado does with the information I gather. But that's a lie. I'm complicit. I'm part of the machine, and the machine grinds people up and spits them out. She paused and looked away from the camera for a moment. But last week, something happened that changed everything. I met someone, a good person, an honest person, a person who sees the world like it has meaning and purpose and goodness in it. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it would feel like to step out of the darkness, to be someone different, to be better. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if someone like me, someone who's done the things I've done, can ever really be good. But I want to try. I want to try so badly that it terrifies me. So I'm going to do something that's probably going to ruin my career and possibly end my life. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to disappear. And I'm going to try to be the person that he believes I can be. The video ended. I sat there in the darkness of my office, watching the cursor blink on an empty screen, and I cried. I cried for the woman I'd married. I cried for the choice she'd made. I cried for the life she'd given up to be with me. I cried for the fact that she'd carried the weight of this secret for 23 years and never let me know. I cried because I finally understood that what we'd had was real. That despite everything, despite all the deception and lies that came before, the life we'd built together had been genuine. She'd chosen me. She'd chosen a normal life. She'd chosen to leave the darkness behind. And now she was gone, and I was left holding all the pieces of her secret life, trying to understand what I was supposed to do with it all. I looked at the clock. It was 4:30 in the morning. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained in a way I'd never experienced before, but I knew I couldn't sleep. Not yet. Not until I'd made a decision about what I was going to do with what Maria had left me. Walsh had given me a choice. I could walk away and pretend this never happened. I could burn the letter, destroy the USB drive, and live the rest of my life in comfortable ignorance. No one would bother me. No one would care. Or I could use what I had. I could take the information Maria had gathered and do something with it. Not for revenge, because Maria had been explicit about that, but to help the people that Delgado had hurt. To expose what was hidden, to bring some kind of justice to a situation that had been hidden in the shadows for too long. I thought about Michael and Sarah sleeping in their beds upstairs. I thought about the future I wanted for them. I thought about what kind of man I wanted to be for them. Did I want to be a man who turned away from the truth when it was uncomfortable? Or did I want to be a man who stood up for what was right, even when it was dangerous? I opened my email and typed out a message to a contact I had from my military days. Someone I trusted, someone who worked in law enforcement at the federal level. I told him I had information about a criminal organization that he needed to see. I told him it was urgent. I asked him to meet me the following day. Then I logged out and shut down my computer. I went upstairs and looked in on my children. Sarah was still asleep on the couch downstairs. Michael was awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. I sat down on the edge of his bed. "Hey, Dad," he said quietly. "Hey, buddy," I replied. "Are you okay?" "No," he said. "I don't think I'm ever going to be okay again." I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. "I know, but we're going to get through this. Together. I promise you that." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced, and I wasn't sure I was either. I met with Agent Chen at a federal building the next morning. I brought copies of the documents, enough to prove what I was telling him was real. His face went through several expressions as he read skepticism, shock, anger, then grim determination. "Your wife was Maria Thomas?" he asked. The fact that he already knew her name sent a chill down my spine. "How do you know that?" "Because we've been investigating Delgado for years. We've known about an intelligence analyst who worked for him in the late 80s. Someone brilliant. We assumed she was dead, but she just disappeared. She left, I said. She walked away from the operation, for me. Chen leaned back. If you hand me this information, you become a target. Your family becomes a target. Are you certain? I thought about Maria, about her letter, about her choice to step out of darkness. I'm certain. Over the next 72 hours, everything changed. Federal agents secured the house. They took the USB drive. They moved my family to a safe house surrounded by armed guards and security systems. I had to tell Michael and Sarah the truth. I watched their faces as they processed that their mother had been a spy, that she'd walked away from a criminal organization, that she'd left behind information that could bring it down. Why didn't she tell us? Sarah asked through tears. Because she was trying to protect you, I said. She wanted you to have normal lives. A week later, Agent Chen called. Delgado knows something's wrong. He's moving assets, closing operations. We're executing the warrants tonight. That evening we watched the news as federal agents moved in. I saw Delgado being led out in handcuffs, his face showing real emotion for the first time, shocked that his comfortable world could crumble so fast. The trials lasted 2 years. I testified about the information Maria had left. I stood in court and told the story of a woman who had been a spy, who had walked away from that darkness, and who had spent the rest of her life trying to atone for it. Delgado was convicted on 17 counts, life sentences, his organization dismantled. Justice, in its imperfect way, had been served. When it was finally over, Chen called and said, "It's done. You can move on with your life now." But I knew that wasn't true. I would carry Maria with me forever. I would carry the weight of her secret, the sacrifice she'd made to be with me, the choice I'd made to honor her legacy. Because in the end, I understood what she'd been trying to teach me. Sometimes doing what's right means sacrificing what's comfortable. Sometimes it means stepping into darkness to bring light. Sometimes it means honoring the people we love by becoming better than we were before. And standing there in my new life, in my new town, with my new identity, I finally realized that Maria had given me more than information. She'd given me purpose. She'd given me the understanding that an ordinary life can hold extraordinary meaning, that love can transform even the darkest soul, that sometimes the greatest gift we can leave behind is not what we've done, but who we've become. I'm not the same man I was before that funeral. I'm not the teacher who believed the world was simple and straightforward, but I'm the man Maria believed I could be, and that's enough.